gonna continue with a very interesting talk. Pablo, are you there? Pablo, nice to see you. He's based in Puerto Rico. He's a friend, good friend of the SSIG, and he was the host and organizer of three ICANN meetings. He said, well, this is a lot of work, but ICANN meetings or summits are imply endless work. And we were lucky to attend to those summits twice. And they have been impeccable, very well organized programs. And he's very supportive of the agenda, the programs, whether it is online or face to face. Adrian and the whole team is here. Can you see us? Okay, good. And Pablo studied many different technologies, NCC, but he is going to be speaking on the ethics of emerging technologies. He specialized in ethics, and he has sent us a very important presentation. Sometimes we run out of time. Can we share your email just in case we have questions at the end? And if we can share or your presentation with the rest of the attendees. Precisely. Is we never have enough time to discuss these issues. Especially, I would like to have an interactive session that can persist beyond the school because the school, the SSIG, has been the place where we have discussed the intersection of ethics and emerging technologies. Most of the people have been discussing on the issue of AI. However, there are many things that haven't been discussed so far, and I would like to touch upon very briefly because I will take a closer look at that because these things are happening and we are urged to be involved in these discussions. Where are these discussions held and when? And what level of involvement and participation and responsibility we have as users of these technologies and recipients of these technologies. This is a summary of the topics that we'll be discussing. And before we delve into the core of this business, I would like to share with you how we define emergent technologies. Unequivocally, technologies are conceived as existing new technologies. However, emerging technologies are characterized by other factors. One is because it's promising, that it's going to be innovative, that's going to have a socio-economic impact, and that have higher solutions that may solve existing problems, and especially because part of that solution has not been attaining its maximum potential, and that's why is in the pipeline. And that is why we have a large number of devices that are in the marketplace, that is not the output, but it is a product that allows research to be up to speed sustainably and doing some business, or allows the researcher how to maintain themselves or keep up to speed while they do further research. That's why when we produce these technologies, we need to think of the positioning. And apart from that, apart from considering this, what I would like to show you is what is this about? The ethics of emergent technologies intersect with the user, and from the point of view of the device or the developer. Ethics in technological development. I am convinced and I know full well that there are ethical principles when creating technologies that should be considered or integrated in this pipeline. We urge a call upon the academia, especially the School of Engineers, Science, Technology, Engineering, and Mathematics, because apart from teaching these disciplines, they could teach other courses, including the ethical principles when developing technologies, when programming technologies, and when developing entrepreneurship and critical thinking. And we believe that we've been doing so. However, we need to have a general framework to facilitate the know how, the framework, the mindset from one place to another, or from one technology to another. As this is the case, the responsibility on the part of developers is such, but what is our responsibility as users or as end users of the technology, and to what extent should be we should be involved to talk to the developers and bring to the table what is going on. So, transparency and accountability are key factors. In both directions, a two-way street, not only on the part of the developer, but also on our part, because we need to make sure that during school, our voice needs to be heard. When our voice is barely heard, what are those go-betweens or intermediary that can echo our voice? And we have the opportunity and the chance through the SSIG to take that information somewhere else. What we should continue carrying or continue doing is, excuse me that I have, excuse me that I have an inconvenience here. We'll resume. Let me fix it and we'll resume in a few seconds.
Mil disculpas por esto.
Excuse me. Let's resume. When we talk about transparency and accountability, here we have how social impact affects technology and affects eventually society. The use of a technology, in this case AI, was used unethically and illicitly to create advertising over the internet and over TV using this celebrity's voice, that is Scarlett Johansson. I think that he was starring in Marvels, and she's filing a claim against AI for good as she is sponsoring a special technology. Please note that this is the negative impact that is detrimental to society. On the other hand, you will see that there are benefits, and the benefits are that you should be involved looking for further information on AI or artificial intelligence for good. So we're talking about neural networks. The neural network initiative is something that is jointly organized or sponsored with the UN together with other initiatives such as robotics or other engineering disciplines, natural sciences also, social and hard sciences are pursuing solutions to cover other things like natural disasters, wars, removing waste in places where we've been, we've been throwing away this waste, and how we can remediate and how can restore those places could be restored by means of this technology, coordinated to pursue this purpose. So please, you can look for more information. That is the AI for Good Neural Network. It's a global summit that I think is ending today, but I'm sure that it's going to go viral and we'll be talking about this topic for some time. So we talk about the implementation and the ethical challenges in the implementation, benefits and risks for society, and then inclusion and equality in access. When we talk about inclusion and equality, poor people, not only poor people, but also people with disabilities, living with disabilities, probably because they're deaf or because they're blind. They all know to pursue ways together with the developers of technology and with service providers. We need to embark upon an initiative to find solutions so we can include and we can all be inclusive with all these voices. So initiatives such as the SSIG is are very important because it echoes a voice to so many groups, to so many people, and to so much impact. Voices that should be heard. Forums like this are important to discuss them from the academic, professional, and personal view. Let's see how these technologies impact society because the intent of my presentation is not just to preach or to convince. What I want is to raise awareness of what's going on, not only in terms of AI, but also together with other disciplines. AI has exacerbated the know-how or knowledge of many people on how confidential, proprietary, personal data are being used. And this is not relative only to AI. This happened before. AI is just a response to the existence of accumulation and gathering of massive personal data. I don't know if you remember, but you will hear phrases or terms such as big data. Big data was merely the creation of databases gathering millions and millions and tons of information of all types, whether it was names, last names, gender, dates of birth, places of birth. And based on that information, one could use that information to create successive information that would have to do with buying behaviors, entertainment, entertainment preferences, traveling preferences as well. But this information could be misused. It could be misused to discriminate against people. That it could be ethnia, religious, political, religious groups, political associations, or affiliations. So we could be, I mean, we need to be aware that this could happen. And also we have the inherent risk of vulnerability of information. And that is why we need to pay attention because every time we browse a website and we enter the information such as name, last name, date of birth, place of birth, work, residence, and all of that, just by gathering information, we should pay attention because when you don't pay for a product, you become the product. It's your information. So we want to make sure that you don't fall prey of unscrupulous people or the bad guys that may abuse of your credit record, credit risk, personal data disclosures. So there's a whole need of regulating and protecting personal data. And we, such as organizing schools like this in the SSIG or other academic institutions like ICANN, the chapters of ISOC or Internet Society, having chapters in so many countries across Latin America, Ibero-America, and the United States, could express ourselves, our views, and we could be the carriers of that information that probably they're not aware of this information, so their voices could be heard. So we are basically their voices. We become their voices. So imagine how important your role or the role that you play in this school is. You're going to be the go-between between those people. So it's a serious participation in initiatives of this kind. Governance and technology regulation is very important. But where we require ethical regulatory frameworks and where shall we have them? What are the forms? As we said, it could be the United Nations, ICLAC, the OAS, all these places where the SSIG has been involved and has been expressing its voice. And get we shouldn't caught off guard and we should always take the message. So the ethical regulatory frameworks and technology regulation and governance is very important. However, the challenges are how we go about the ethical regulations, where to take them. And global regulations and ethical regulatory frameworks should depend on countries and other organizations where they could participate and integrate collectively or cohesively. And to work just like the EU does, I'm sure that it can be done in our countries. And we need to be on the alert and to carry that voice and participate in the decision making processes where we are going to devise and create these ethical regulatory frameworks. Let's see what these frameworks are. Generic approaches is one. This was widely discussed in several schools in the past. And let me touch upon what the generic approach is like. It's what we consider a group of technologies, but from the standpoint that is very superficial. It's where we are starting with the inception of that technology. However, there are other approaches, and that is the anticipatory approach. That is part, or that is when you start considering when you are about to do something. For example, when nuclear energy emerged, some researchers or thinkers or think tanks thought that it was done or used for wars or to wage wars. It will consume eventually all the CO2 in the atmosphere, destroy the planet, and it would be impossible to regulate that energy, and it shouldn't be developed. And that is the detrimental aspects of nuclear energy. When that was used, or when that is used without any scruples, it will result in those detriments, not consuming the CO2 in the atmosphere, but basically it will cause chaos in the planet. But nuclear energy nowadays, it is widely used not only for power generation in many countries, but also it is used for medical uses. And there's a whole field, research field that is called nuclear medicine, and that is what precisely allows to study cardiology, the width of the heart, of the walls of the heart. And that would have been impossible without nuclear medicine. So technologies bring benefits. And as long as we prepare to handle or manage these technologies will allow us to mitigate risks and to mitigate risk and improve benefits. Then we have the ethical risk analysis. There are many. There's one that there's a cost benefit ethic risk analysis and the cost ethical risk analysis. And they could be compiled. It's not that we have to do one or the other. This could be used jointly to take a look closer at the technologies from different angles. So it is important for you to know these regulatory frameworks because as long as new technologies emerge and as long as emerging technologies, existing ones, and the ones that are upcoming, you should know full well how to mitigate risk and enhance its benefits, leveraging the regulatory frameworks that we have available nowadays. And these are not just all of them, but they're just a few of the many that exist by sharing methodologies to assess a technology in particular. Then we have experimental approaches. This when a scientist or an engineer deals with this technology from the professional field, experimental field to analyze the extent
involucrar ese
and the potential risks involved. But a powerful forum would be the deliberative, participatory, ethical approaches. Participation or participatory indicates where to take part. The rostrum, for example, at the UN. We cannot be part of the UN, however, we can do it through ICANN or through the SSIG or other organizations that become members of these organizations to carry the message to these international forums. Besides, at the SSIG, we have an extraordinary forum as a platform to bring these topics to the table where we can explore and go beyond what was explained and to push the envelope on what it may be possible within the community in your region. And at the same time, one can find continuity while having an ongoing dialogue with other people with similar concerns. So, this is a special opportunity that we need to seize to learn the regulatory frameworks and to carry this information and to assess it and to participate and to attend these participatory and deliberative events. Also, there are challenges, the challenges that exist in harmonization of policies and regulations because there are going to be disputes in the way we see things, in the way we understand them. Even though there's no language barrier, every term has a different meaning. So imagine how cultural and legal differences that are proprietary or specific to a certain jurisdiction, region, urge us to participate in these international forums, such as this one, ICANN, the Internet Society events, also protecting personal data privacy. This is taken as a given sometimes. We know that we're participating in these events to talk about the protection of personal data privacy, and we need to ensure that with the development of new technologies, we should carry this voice. We should advocate this as one of the features of academia as students in the academic world, as users of technology, and as citizens of our own countries. We have the responsibility to discuss this and to make this possible. Obviously, there's no doubt that there shouldn't be any restrictions on the progress made by technologies, and we shouldn't hinder innovation either. Striking a balance between this innovation and the security of the privacy or the personal data privacy, especially if this is not protecting, it's not protected and this is affecting people. So there are benefits, and we need to strike part or enter into partnerships with other institutions and trying to reach consensus at the international level with international collaboration, with resources by exchanging know-how and resources. Like here at the SSSAG, discussing ideas. While we discuss ideas is where we have the beginning of knowledge and know-how. The fact that you are attending this conference makes you a leader and makes you the recipient of that knowledge. And you're responsible for sharing with others that were unable to come here. That is why we have promotion of innovation and competitiveness. There are other ethical and social considerations in international collaboration. I have touched upon some aspects. However, there's an overlap of concepts because they are strictly related. The impact on equality and inclusion is the risk of being dependent highly on technology. That is a risk. Why is that? Because each country should do as much as possible to develop its own technologies. Even though they may be similar to others, but at least it's going to be its own. You cannot be dependent highly on a large multinational corporation that at any point in time may be the owner of that technology and you highly depend on them and they have the magic recipe. That is why we should learn and we should contribute in this by developing innovation and technology. Peer-to-peer collaboration is important in terms of development, programming, in networks, over the internet. However, we have other contributions to make, and that is making sure that within our jurisdictions, these technologies that are being widely used, we do have control over them. And this is what we like to convey to our own governments, that these technologies are not eventually are not eventually kidnapping us or hijacking us. So we basically fall prey of these companies. So it's very important to consider this, and it's very important that governments hear our voices, that we can make the necessary contributions, developing our own technologies. And that is why it is so important to invest, support institutions and other academic institutions at the national and regional level to work along those lines with innovation in every single country. And for these purposes, we can mitigate the implications on global security because as long as we have control over our technologies, we will have the capacity or capability to manage what's possible, what's feasible, and what we can foresee or anticipate. Because precisely those that develop technology in other contexts, environments, or cultures, or in other economic fields or companies, did not consider this because knowledge has features of its own in line with the context where it emerges. It's very, very difficult that a set of developers in a certain geography different from yours, with an economy different from yours, could basically have to fulfill the same needs that you have. So we need to underscore that control over the risk of being dependent highly on technology. There are also ethical challenges on technology development. And one of them is the algorithm bias. Algorithm bias occur as a result of what I said before, because when you develop platforms, technology, you do so based on your experience, based on what you know. So, and that does not necessarily fulfill the needs of others with people in other geographies, in other cultures, that may manage things from a different angle. And this allows for transparency for this sort of collaborations. Because as long as we can develop and we can be transparent with others, that element of technology will be now considered, and it's our responsibility as developers and as end users of this technology to bring this to the table, which will eventually ensure equality and the principle of non-discrimination. Some examples of these algorithm biases that may seem incredible in terms of information. You know why? Because personally, it will affect me. Imagine when you have face recognition technology or software cannot recognize somebody's face, or when these technologies recognize ethnia but not others. That was the case of Mr. Williams in Detroit, in the United States. He had to take an online test, and the face recognition software could not see or could not recognize Mrs. Williams.
Otras amistades que son caucásicas,
Or Caucasian, those that are white, sometimes they could see technology like that. And if they are black, probably there's no face recognition software. The software did not work, or sometimes probably they have to use lights aiming at the face so the technology could work. So unfortunately, that technology does not see that person because she's black. And those people that design that technology design it according to their needs. So they did not consider fulfilling other ethnies' needs. And they presuppose that these technologies will work. I mean, they haven't done anything wrong. There's no malice in this. But however, until you don't try this technology, you don't know if it's going to work or be interpretive. And there were some other cases. These are some news that came from Amazon, where the facial recognition software had troubled recognizing women faces, whereas in some others, they couldn't recognize between dark complexion and a gorilla. So this gave way so we could develop and fine tune these technologies. But there are some algorithm biases. More than 40 or 50% of these people that requested a file for a mortgage to buy a house were rejected that mortgage. Most of them had dark complexion.
entonces se presume
We presume then that our ethnical groups, in particular, that if it was programmed in such a way, I mean, people would behave accordingly. And imagine Puerto Ricans are fond of salsa, and therefore they're good dancers. Unfortunately, we all like, we like salsa, but we don't dance salsa. Imagine how much we could integrate within algorithms such as this one for mortgages, for personal loans, for information recognition or facial recognition such as this. For example, in the case of facial recognition software, in one of these cases, identify that person as perpetrator of violence or wrongdoings. I mean, he was not a criminal, but he was recognized as a criminal. So this could be detrimental and could affect seriously human beings. But let me bring other things to the table, where we have AI and ethics and robotics. And let me briefly touch upon the impact on AI. Thought that robots were going to steal our jobs, that they were going to substitute labor force, especially in Detroit, where you have mass production of vehicles. Human beings and robots learn to do repetitive tasks. And right now, they become more efficient and they can enhance productivity. As a matter of fact, productivity was significantly increase thanks to human beings working together with robots. The same goes for AI. But let me touch upon some other thing. The moral responsibility of machines. If you place priority on this title, on the moral responsibility of machines and how they will interact with us, let me bring this to the table because from 30 years or 20 years or 50 years out, let's see how moral responsibility of human beings interact with machines. What would happen to human beings where you have cyber human robotics or humanoids or for example an assistant or a medical care assistant for grandchildren that they have a certain impediment or disability. How these people are going to interact with this person or with this humanoid because we have the ethical interaction of these humanoids with human beings. And let me bring to your attention that we do have a series of humanoid robots that are being developed to provide services to people that are lonely, that they are single, that they have a certain disability, probably they lost a limb or they were born in that way. I mean, these people have physical needs. They should love, share things, or probably they are disfigured because of a fire, or because of an accident, or because they fought in wars and they were disfigured because they were wounded. This, I mean, humanoid robotics could be a solution for these purposes, and they are already working on that. So I bring this to the table because when I referred to this presentation, in one of the articles, we found that w- there's a question if we should or we ought give rights to robots. This may seem crazy now. Hopefully, 30 years out, 50 years out, we can speak once again on this topic, and you will see that it's not that crazy. I'm not going to delve into this because we have already approached the concepts. However, we know what's the impact on productivity and labor well being is, ethics in training and labor assessment, the challenge of privacy of virtual labor environments, and striking a balance between virtuality or being online and the labor reality. We're responsible of not falling asleep because precisely there should be a need to integrate all these sort of technologies or these type of technologies. We already touched upon governance and transparency. However, I do want to cover dialogue and involvement with the stakeholders because we are the stakeholders. We are the ones taking part in summits or forums like this one, whether it is in the political, social, scientific, academic arenas. We should be attentive to this and participate through this dialogue. We cannot afford to waive that right. Our voices should be heard. So once and again, we should repeat and replicate this message. I'm sure that some of you have seen the Top Gun sequel. There was a part where the plane had to land a very protected area in Russia to bombard it. And in Top Gun, they were called standalone arms or weapons. I mean, they launch ballistic missiles, machine guns, vessels. So it's a whole bunch of warlike standalone weapons that, in line with parameters or variables, they decide whether to launch, fire, go and displace itself to point A or B. And we have nothing to do about this. So how can we address this? Well, let's go back to that participation in the forum. There should be collaboration between countries then.
Los aspectos sociales y laborales, mire,
Social and labor aspects, because innovation is non-stop. Knowledge will progress whether we like it or not. So we should be involved in all of these technologies because eventually it will have an impact on our jobs. There's digital inequalities. From our point of view, having our own benchmark or having our own forms, what are we going to do to help those that they're not in the same level playing field or reach that digital equality? So we're going to take the message and convey the message to those corporations so this social corporate responsibility continues promoting knowledge, well-being, the well-being of our employees. So they could be legitimate, well-integrated members of society. So let me bring this to the table, the ethics on biotechnology and genetics, such as the key takeaway. I don't know if you remember the ethical frameworks. Well, the ethical frameworks could be driven from AI to programming, biotechnology, and as a matter of fact, there are bioethic disciplines in place. However, we need to be on the alert and be using these results or these technologies. And here you can see that we have a lot to say about this. For example, like this girl was born deaf. She was operated and they injected some genes to be compatible with her DNA. They were injected especially in the back of the ear, and she started listening. Well, she started hearing. One of the main attainments of this technology. So, once we develop the molecular tools like nano particles, nano machines, can basically enhance DNA's human beings or human beings' DNAs. But these technologies also has its disadvantages. And there are ethical implications by manipulating genetics that I wouldn't bother to cover. I'm sure that you are aware of this, and if you want to read further information, you may do so. Genetic experiments are already regulated by some countries. And if it's regulated in such a way that In the United States, it impacts groups of interest that are religious groups that decided and they exercise influence on the Republican administration. And they argued that it was not ethical to run some tests with stem cells, that they could be created in some organs. There were 32 strains of stem cells in the United States, and almost all of them were destroyed. Dozens of years of study and research were lost in your countries. Are you aware of this technology? Do you have this technology available in the country? Should we have this technology? Where is the working group where we should discuss this? Who would be the intermediary carrying our voice to consider these aspects? And that is why it is important to attend these sort of conferences so you can be on the alert to raise awareness and at least that you can be heard. Genetic privacy could seem rare nowadays. However, that child that was operated, that she was deaf. Right now she can hear, and that should be disclosed because she was recipient of that genetic therapy or that treatment. But I don't think it is not necessary to disclose this. Probably when they change transgenders from male to females, probably we could disclose this. But that is a hot debate. And what are we going to do with our cultures in our countries? We need to see what's right or wrong in line with our collective thinking. This is a very deep issue: assisted reproduction, genetics, ethics. This exceeds by far my expertise as professor, university professor, but however, this is a topic that each and every one of us should be involved and understand and be aware of the policies and what they say about it. Remember the ethical frameworks. How do we have the metrics, or how do we weigh the risks and benefits in terms of genetics and find a way so that everyone of our compatriots could have access to genetics diversity in terms in the medical field, or when we find other human beings that they were subject to other changes. So how we're going to interact with those people? What are we going to do about it? We have the ethical impact on augmented and virtual reality. Little by little, this is firmly rooted in society. We are getting to know this little by little, but it implies some risks of vulnerability and privacy. I am sure that you have heard of many impediments on development or advances on this experience. This is not excluded from the risks of or vulnerabilities. The impact of digital security and what you have heard along these days is that this presentation wouldn't be comprehensive if we didn't touch upon this in the spirit of not to take more of your time. Each and every one of us needs to pursue involvement in dialogue, in participation, and not be a passive audience of what others are doing. We're accountable to participate and to carry this message to those that they don't have the privilege to be heard. So, we have a whole set of challenges by representing reality. I was in New York. I was discussing about natural history in the museum. And one of the curators at the museum came to me and said, "What's missing or what should be added to this exhibition?" And I said, "I believe that the ethnia represented in this exhibition, museum exhibition, needs to be as accurate as possible. Not only the Aboriginal peoples would use eagle feathers or buffalo fur. Not all of them painted their faces or had leather garments. We need to make sure that when we use augmented reality, that we need to be as accurate as possible and we shouldn't fall into discrimination or mock others or mock other people, other ethnia because of any reasons. We need to be respectful of others because everybody has their own rights. And these are the ethical implications in that social interaction of what we've been discussing. Much of this is not deep. However, what is profound is that we need to be on the alert and aware that this should be integrated in the technology pipeline and in the future innovations where you could be an end user eventually, and if you are a user, that you don't fall prey of algorithm biases, that you don't fall prey of mockery, crime, ill treatment. So we should be heard to prevent this. And to conclude, ethics in innovation and technology development are not opposite. It's not that I'm proposing watch out with technology because there's danger in it. No, I'm not saying that. What I'm proposing, what I'm advocating, is that we need to be on the alert that before or emerging technologies, we should have the necessary tools to assess that emerging technology and to take a closer look at these technologies from different angles as if we had different filters to perform a more comprehensive analysis or a wider analysis in order to mitigate risks and enhance benefits. And finally, these are the references that I use, and I urge you to continue with this dialogue. If you have questions, I would gladly take them. If not, you can contact me to info@dr.pr so we could continue interactions. Thank you. Thank you very much for giving me this chance. And I urge you to continue and support the SSIG. That is one of the most important forums that has been leading voices such as mine that could be heard and that could discuss and do this transfer of know-how and knowledge. Thank you very much. Have a nice afternoon. Thank you, Pablo. I think we're run out of time. However, Two brief questions that you can take, and later we will continue with the next panel. Two questions. hmm Hello, Pablo. My name is Federica from LACNEC. Long time no see. Thank you very much for your presentation and for the wealth of information that you have to assimilate. And I wanted to ask you from the CCTLDs, as you are the director of NIC PR. You were speaking of promoting and protecting and advocating ethics in terms of emerging technologies through collaboration as well as multi stakeholder dialogue. So, my question is, as CCTLDs, what is the role played in this forum and how regional organizations such as ACT TLD could help with creating the necessary channels to promote this dialogue? I'm referring to aspects of regulation and the importance to consider some parameters and how CCTLDs are attentive to these local situations. That's what I would like to know. Another question? Any other questions? Yes. Hi, my name is Ivana from Peru. I would like to commend you and acknowledge you for giving us so much know-how by replicating this to prevent biases. I'm an IT engineer. At all times, we learn programming, infrastructure, networks, and all of that. However, in during my major, we didn't take any courses on ethics, social community, or whatever. So, to contextualize my question, what would be the recommendation on what sector we could teach these biases from the regulatory point of view, corporate point of view, or probably having a multi-stakeholder approach? Because as technology practitioners, we could say, yeah, we could mitigate those technology aspects. However, we don't do it through social awareness or with ethics. Thank you very much. Let me take the first one. CCTLDs have a very limited mandate. That's why these forums are so important. CCTLDs, we could participate and create environments or forums or support schools such as the CCCAG to discuss these topics. Second, at the local level, we could promote and create these spaces to hold these discussions, and as participants, we could promote our dialogue. It's an especially extraordinary space that can help in creating the necessary spaces among the CCTLDs and support each other so they can learn as long as possible to join later on these forums. So obviously we can extend on these observations. In connection with the second question, the experience as engineer or developer is not, I mean, it's not that you are the only one that did not have this experience. I believe that academia should increasingly integrate the ethical aspects in emerging technologies and also from the fairly rooted technologies that we're all aware, like over-the-counter technologies, over-the-counter medication, for example. And we should integrate the academic curricula, the educational courses covering ethics in such a way so we can enhance and elevate and bring to the table the focus of this discussion to ethics, algorithm biases, and all kind of biases and discrimination, whether it is on the use or the development of technology. Once again, I urge you to contact me at info at drret.pr, so we can connect later on. Once again, thank you for being here, for giving me the chance to speak. This has been a privilege, an honor. I wish you success and hope you have a nice day. Thank you. Thank you, Pablo. We'll see each other in Rwanda, right? Yeah.